Hello guys and gals, and welcome back to another episode of Haunted Gaming. This time we take a look at a creepypasta, a gaming one, as we're a big return to gaming as well too, since we haven't done it in a while, called Ebgerd, the rock and roll troll with soul. Again, the title must be quite invigorating, and it did win Creepypasta Month for February, so as democracy dictates, I'm going to do it. And is it going to be a good Creepypasta month? Well, let's see, and let's all form our own opinions, but sit back, relax, and let's sit down and enjoy the creepypasta titled Ebgerd, the rock and roll troll with soul. Clickety clickety clack, not the muted, subdued sounds of the modern laptop keyboard on which I currently type. Those are akin to modern Homo sapiens when compared to the Cro-Magnon of old-style keys to mid to late 1980s computer keyboards. You could feel the made-in-China metal spring recoiling defiantly against your phalanges with every keystroke. Each letter required a firm and confident strike. Although the PCs and word processors all had a backspace key, the hollow, tinny sound and upward pressure of tapping each letter instilled in you an anxious need to hit the correct key on the first strike. I imagined that they designed these input devices to ensure a seamless transition for those who had grown accustomed to analog-style typewriter key recoil. Those who, when forced to type on a modern QWERTY device, have the nagging notion that it doesn't feel like I'm actually hitting the key. I was on a machine connected to such a keyboard that I inadvertently set in motion the following events. I don't remember exactly what year it was, but I can recall that it was late fall, probably around November, as most of the tree's foliage had succumbed to the force of gravity, and those leaves that remained were past the peak of their fiery color. They were gray and crunchy like a once famous pop singer who had since lost her talent and dignity. What I remembered for certain was the keyboard connected to the family's computer, loud and springy. It wasn't an Apple IIe, but to the layman, it was definitely comparable. My mother had talked my father into buying it as an expense for her job. She was a secretary and middle-proof reader for Highlights for Children magazine. With a home computer, she was able to take her work back from the office on diskette and make progress while staying home with her children, my brother and me at the time. At first, Dad had been reluctant to spend the money on a personal computer system, which was far more expensive at the time than it is now, but after talking to friends and reading a few magazine articles, realized that in Mom's off time the machine could also be used for games and entertainment. In fact, he ended up buying a modem when he learned that some of his work buddies played MUDs, or multi-user dungeon-style games. Early online text-based adventure games. Imagine World of Warcraft for blind people. In any case, Dad learned that the computer could be used for far more than just work or business, so whenever I found out about a game that interested me, I would tell him about it, and he would typically find it and buy it so I could play. I remember when we had a version of the Oregon Trail that was different than the one I played at school, and also a Star Trek battle game which was pretty fun. He also picked up practically anything that he thought looked good, or perhaps more accurately whatever he could spare in petty cash from the Circuit City the next county over, or the local PC repair shop. Thusly, we ended up with a ton of games, a few good, some forgettable, and many of which were pretty crappy. Having to wake up to ride 35 minutes to school 5 days a week, coupled with the early AM wake-up time for catching Saturday morning cartoons, resulted in my oftentimes being awake from at least 6 o'clock on Sunday mornings. The only programs that came in on our fake wood panel dial-operated television in the sunrise hours of Sunday were repeats of the 700 Club, black and white romance movies, and a show called Yan Can Cook. Not exactly riveting television for a boy under 10 years old, so occasionally, I'd play computer games until my parents woke up and could take me to the park or could humor me with board games. Mostly, I played what were considered to be at the time action or adventure games. We did, however, have several games that Dad picked up very cheaply because they were intended to be educational, things like Math Blaster and, the learning to type programs. There was always plenty of selection, and I never felt starved for a PC game to play. There was one game that I remember distinctly. It stays in my memory not exactly for reasons of it being incredibly fun or unique, yet I still feel I won't forget. I remember sitting in my Rambo pajamas, flipping through the diskettes in my father's case, looking for something to pass the time until the day started when I came across a game that caught my eye simply because I hadn't played it before. Lord knows how long it was there before I finally noticed it. The black plastic wafer had a simple off-white address label style sticker on it reading Ebgerd 087114 in fading printer ink. Mind you, back then diskettes having low-budget labels giving virtually no information about the program contained within wasn't abnormal. I pushed the disk in, slid the plastic closer tab over the drive, and typed in Ebgerd on the command prompt. A program started up and looked like it had the potential for an hour or two of fun. The main menu screen was simply a black background with a pixelated image of a cartoon man with a large forehead, slicked hair, dingy gray skin, and what looked to be a rather tacky French sequin jacket. The title of the program, Learning with Ebgerd, the rock and roll troll with soul, was displayed in large text over a black background dotted with musical notes. I pressed space and a menu came up with the following choices: Arith 1, Arith 2, Spelling, Vocab 1, Vocab 2, Typing 1, and Typing 2. Although I could already tell this was an educational game, I decided to just give it a shot. I had nothing better to do. The Arith programs consisted of pretty simple math problems, and I quickly grew tired of them. They only went as far as times tables to 6. The spelling and vocab games weren't great either, just unscrambling words and multiple choice word definitions. I suppose they did their jobs, though. It's thanks to that game that I still know the meaning of the word masticate. It was the typing games that really stuck with me, though. I felt that they were most effective, as well as the most fun for me. They were both the same, Typing 1 and Typing 2. It was just the speed of the program was changed. Upon choosing a typing game, the monitor would switch to a screen showing the large four-headed, fringe-jacketed character from the menu screen. I later deduced that this character was named Ebgerd in the upper left, with a music stave in the middle of the screen. A MIDI-style song would play as the image of Ebgerd would hold a microphone to his mouth and sing along as the notes dotted across the stave moved from right to left. On certain notes, the player was signaled to press a key on the keyboard to spell words. The Typing 1 program had about 6-letter words or less, whereas Typing 2 used longer words and moved generally faster. The game actually worked as intended, and I began to become more and more familiar with the locations of keys on the keyboard, and to this day I discredit that game with helping me learn and type as quickly as I do. But as much good as the program did, I've made a promise to myself never to play, never to look at it again, for more than about a few seconds. After the initial lazy Sunday morning that I discovered it, I would continue to load up the game and play the typing program. For a while, I didn't play any other game, only the Ebgerd typing one. It was fun to play, and the words it chose for the player to type, aside from a few standards, seemed to always be new and usually different. The main things about the game that were always the same, however, were the song that would be played during the gameplay, and the graphical flashes when a string of words was completed. The entire time that you played the typing game, though, a stock rock and roll song played in MIDI, or chiptune style. At least that's what I thought at the time. It was a fairly standard variation on the 12-bar blues that was so popular throughout the 50s and 60s. It wasn't until later in my life that I figured out the actual song that the game was playing through the speakers. So every few weeks or so, when I became bored with whatever game I was playing on the ancient computer, I'd always go back to Ebgerd, the rock and roll troll with soul, and mostly play the typing program, as I found it to be the most entertaining. Naturally, I got better and better at the typing game. And it honestly helped me become a better fluent computer user, I guess, though regrettably not without backlash. As I would play through the game, with its seemingly unending bank of words for me to learn and type, I would sometimes get caught up in the experience of playing, and not realize when I had completed a level. I'd be staring, unblinking at the cathode ray tube monitor, for over 20 minutes at a time, eyeballs drying in Sandman's dust, pupils trying to keep up with the widely flashing colors indicating successful typing. Black jumped to white, which cut to green, pink, brown, violet, gray, blue. A millisecond apiece of each of the 64 colors the program could muster, strung together repeatedly into a hypnotizing orgy of violent digital mayhem. All accompanied by good old American rock and roll, the music of the devil, as dubbed by mid-century tightwads. I was later told by my parents that I was sometimes found early on Sunday mornings blankly gazing at the computer monitor with crusty white dried drool on my chin, or in an apparent daze with my head tilted backwards over the swivel back chair. My pale, bloodless face and vacant eyes providing a three-dimensional silver screen into which the yellowing plastic monitor would project its myriad pastel hues. One morning I was found by my neighbors standing with my arms outstretched in the middle of our off-the-main drag street. Another, my mother told me, I had been sitting in the front step, crying into my folded forearms. A few weeks after that, my parents told me that I woke them up, proudly displaying to the both of them a shiny white and red bone fragment, a tooth, I had found between the metal prongs of a pair of needle-nosed pliers. It turned out to be a lower canine, my own, though I don't even remember even removing it. It wasn't even a baby tooth, and thus, it was never replaced. It did, however, leave plenty of room for my wisdom teeth, which I'm told would have been impacted by my lower jaw. In each instance of blackout, whether I had actually been found on the computer or somewhere else, the machine was always left powered on. Always with the primitive bleeps spitting their bluesy jingle from tinny speakers. The screen always alternating between the flashing of colors and the unattended gameplay of a certain typing trainer. I was never ever diagnosed with epilepsy, nor any other physical or mental ailments, save for about depression at age 19, so I still don't exactly have an explanation for an event from my adolescence. That would have no doubt gone into my police record as an assault charge without some covering up. However, I think I now know what triggered it. When I was a teenager, I had a few girlfriends. Well, what a teenager calls girlfriends anyways. In my ignorance, I started to think that things might be getting somewhat serious, and I decided to test if she felt the same way about me the best way I could think of it. I decided that she and I should watch the movie Predator together. If she could get through it without me, without drifting off, I guess, or making some snarky comments. I figured she'd be a keeper, right? So we got about 20 minutes or so through that movie. And I was feeling pretty good about how things were going. If she thought the flick was reprehensible, she was doing a fine job of hiding it, by the way. But at a certain point, I don't know exactly what happened, but I passed out. More specifically, I went into this sort of trance. I can remember the part of the movie when Arnold Schwarzenegger decides to go forward with the mission the government has proposed to him. The commando team were in the sinister glow of a crimson light bulb, traveling to their destination in a helicopter. After that, my memory gets kind of fuzzy. So fuzzy, in fact, that the chopper scene was the last thing I remembered before awakening on. My ancient twin-size mattress, lights out, eyes trying to focus on the dark lump that was actually my mother, knocked out asleep, sitting arms folded on the foot of the bed. What she told me, by extension, what my girlfriend told her at least, was that while watching Predator I became glassy-eyed and stood up, suddenly. She said I had punched the wall several times and then stared clawing at my chest and arms with my fingernails. Both of these claims I corroborated by simply glancing at my bedroom walls and looking at myself before taking a shower. I had no idea what had happened. I knew the girl I was seeing would most likely not want to continue with any relationship. I was out on a camping trip again now, this is later on at age 15, just me and a few buddies. We had a battery-operated AM/FM radio with us and were listening to the local classic rock oldie station while sitting around the campfire, bullshitting. There is a point in time at which I can no longer remember what happens, and have to rely on the recollections of others on the camping trip. Apparently, we're all sitting, 4 of us, around the modest blaze, when I suddenly became agitated and I physically assaulted a friend who was with us. According to the other 2 on the camping trip, I have no memory. I began staring into the flames for several minutes before lunging at the victim. They tell me I cracked his head against the ground. Thank God there wasn't a stone beneath it. Before kneeling over him and trying to pull the canine teeth out of his lower jaw with my hands at first, and then my own teeth, the other 2 friends were able to pull me off and subdue me relatively quickly, although I'm sure that no one else slept very well that night. I was out until sunrise when I woke up and heard what had happened, what I had done. I was mortified. After the camping incident, I learned from my parents that I had more issues when I was younger. Apparently they had found me with self-inflicted scratch marks on my arms more times than they had told me as a child. One day in October when I was 11, I had run headfirst into and started pounding at the neighbor's storm door, shouting something about Uncle John. I don't have an Uncle John. They said that they once found me halfway through our own screen door, scratched up and dotted with bug bites, dried blood on my lower lip and chin. I eventually found out through a mix of conjecture and personal research that all these instances had occurred in the early morning hours of a Sunday, and I had no idea what any of this meant. I had never had any mental or emotional problem to speak of. It wasn't until I was into my 30s that I finally discovered what the hell was happening. After a long period of having no blackouts or violent instances, I came across a single strange thread amongst all the violent outbursts I had. After my mom died, Dad had died several years prior, I once again got my fingers on the old, springy-keyed computer. After going through the possessions of both my dead parents, if you can imagine, I needed a release. A break from all the grim comings and, more fittingly, goings. After Dad died, Mom ended up buying a new PC, complete with Windows 95. Fancy, I know. I searched the file manager for any information that looked important. Credit card, tax info, usernames and passwords. Anything that might help close out this estate and get this whole ordeal finished more quickly. I knew that even though Mom had a new machine, Dad kept his files in the old one. Looking for any remaining financial records, I booted up the old PC. It was almost as old as me. Its black screen with green and graphics looked coolly inviting. I saw that the diskette drive was still loaded and closed. I popped the 5¼ inch floppy out and read the label. Ebgerd 087114. For absolutely no reason at all, I reinserted the diskette and loaded the program. The pixelated, large-browed, and flamboyantly dressed main character of the game popped up, like a greeting from an old friend. I instinctively went right into the typing program. After I started getting the hang of it back, I was doing quite well, bobbing my head to the vaguely familiar tune and squinting at the strobing colors which accompanied getting a good score. Clickety, clickety, clack. I woke up, what must have been several hours after I started the game, lying on my back. The milk crate I had been squatting on was several feet away, and my head was throbbing. My left forearm bent at an odd angle, obviously fractured, my tongue dry and swollen. My pupils couldn't stand the light streaming brilliantly through the torn curtains for more than a few seconds, so I let my ears do the observing. I heard the wind rushing outside, a knocking at the door, a digital ring of a telephone, mice scuttling through the walls, flies buzzing hither and yon, a weed whacker a few hundred of yards away, my empty bowels gurging, a truck air braking at the corner, and almost silently prominent above all, the legacy PC speakers beeping out the notes of a rock and roll song. The monitor flashed violently as I ventured a peek. The colors were hypnotizing, and I hastily closed my eyes. Then all I could hear were the square notes of a song, one I had heard many times in the past, one I could never quite remember fully, one that had been fiendishly following me thanks to the effects of that unassuring old black diskette. I heard them repeating over and over in the blackness of my mind's eye, the notes of the song, the notes of Long Tall Sally. Well, that was a creepypasta for the month of February. How was it? Well, it was a tad anticlimactic. I personally wish something would have happened in the end, but with more effect, but it didn't in my eyes. But as the whole story goes, it picks off from the Polybius Part 3, which we were on, last time, with games affecting people in clandestine ways. So when you look at the story, it seems that these words, or rather, this game would use flashing colors and music to play tricks with the mind, and that's what happens here. The blackouts that would occur, and if you just pick up some keywords and basic habits such as pulling up teeth and whatnot, you can tell that this person is being affected by the game. Now, does it exist? The game, at least. No, it doesn't. As far as I know, it doesn't exist in any database I've looked through. And hell, I thought it would have since, I played a lot of games back in the day like this, since I had a PC with tons of old DOS games. And I would figure with all the games that I played back in the day, this might have existed somewhere. And as far as nostalgia goes, this does hit a soft spot with me, obviously. Now, as far as the story goes, I feel it could have been a lot rather simpler than attempt to be more grandiose, since it just pushes me away when I'm going into the story to understand what the hell is going on, and sometimes it doesn't make any sense, and it just decides to use, a grandiose vocabulary, and it brings up certain points that really doesn't devolve into anything. I mean, when you mention things like the girlfriend and the relationship, it never really goes into it. It just brings it up for like a couple sentences and done. It should be fleshed out rather than just thrown in, when it could obviously play to the whole effect of this character, experiencing these blackouts through this game, inputting these commands into the mind, if you would have to think about it really. It just mentions things, but doesn't really extend, into them or goes past anything there too. Now, you also begin to notice that it does have screenshots, which is amazing. Seriously, when you introduce media to any kind of creepypasta or anything, it adds to it. You want to visualize what the hell is going on, and if you just give pictures too, there you go. You've gotten past that point. So it's like Godzilla NES or Metroid Mother, both amazing tales in their own right. Now, does this deserve creepypasta of the month? Yeah, for the most part, it absolutely does. I just wish it was a little more cohesive, and I wish it wasn't so anticlimactic, because, again, like I just mentioned, earlier, if you introduce these grandiose elements and you introduce things that you don't really flesh out upon, it takes you away from the experience rather than throws you into it. So, the fact that the character is prone to these blackouts, obviously, again, caused by the game, which makes you wonder what the hell we even played as kids. I mean, this made me wonder, too. I mean, could this have happened with us? Did we ever play any, games as children back in the day and experience blackouts? I mean, think about it for a second. Think about it very carefully. I remember back when I was a kid playing certain video games too. Again, the same DOS games, Oregon Trail, not Oregon Trail, but, other kind of games too. And, I'd pass out playing them too. I'd pass out and I couldn't remember certain events. I mean, I remember back then I played A Bug's Life on the PC and I woke up completely, on my chair, had no idea what the hell went on. Again, I didn't rip out teeth or anything, but still, the stuff isn't really new. And that's all I'm really going to mention on the subject. It's kind of out there, and it's just there to help you wonder. Now, all in all, going back to the creepypasta itself, do I think it deserves a title? I personally feel that it does. It should be a little more cohesive, but again, that's my little quirk too on it. Do you believe it deserves a title? Or would you rate it? Or would you change to make it better? Is what I ask you always in the comments below. This has been another episode of Haunted Gaming, and quite a return to gaming. If you like what you saw, then like, comment, and subscribe. This is me, Mudahar, and I'm out.